Let's talk about cars now, because rising energy bills are risking Europe's shift to electric. That's the warning from Volkswagen. VW's boss, Thomas Schaefer, has warned its battery investments will not be profitable if EU policymakers fail to cap rising energy prices. The company is planning 6 battery factories across Europe by 2030. Besides the energy crisis, European investors also face pressure from the United States Inflation Reduction Act, which officials in Europe complain violates World Trade Organization rules. Well, let's talk to Jim Holder, Editorial Director for Car and Autocar. Jim, welcome back to the programme. What exactly is VW going on about here? What's worrying them?
Well, the production of batteries and electric vehicles is incredibly energy intense up front, and those batteries in particular take a huge amount of energy to create. Obviously, that energy is then offset as the cars are used, much fewer of them. But what that upfront cost is taking account of is higher prices for these vehicles. And what we already see is that electric vehicles are around 20% more expensive than combustion engine ones. If energy prices keep going, that gap is going to grow, and they're going to be less attractive to consumers.
VW's criticism is quite striking. I mean, they're clearly very worried. I mean, might we see a renaissance here of the old technology electric was supposed to banish?
Yeah, I think that would be unlikely. I think what VW are trying to do really is put pressure on the politicians to match the sort of incentives that we're seeing, as you highlighted, in the US, that their Asian counterparts are getting to invest in this new technology and this vast leap that they're being required to take. They feel they need some incentive to be able to do that and keep prices at a point where consumers can afford these vehicles. If we want to take climate change seriously, they would argue that this investment is required. And I think it's more likely that they're politicking than there will be any steps back towards combustion engine technology. It feels like they're far too far down the line for that.
Critics might suggest you can hear the sound of taxpayers' eyeballs rolling across Europe as someone again suggests that the poor old taxpayer, should shell out here to subsidise those hard-pressed car makers.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable criticism and one worth balancing, but I think we have to understand how much of progress has come from mobility over the last 120 years, how it has democratised the growth in financial strength of all of us as individuals. And if we want to keep what we have today in terms of all those benefits, then someone has to really pay for it and invest in this step change in technology. And I think really that's what they're asking for, someone to give them a helping hand. They can't make the change alone.
And presumably pretty galling for European car bosses to see the kind of support that is taking place in the United States under President Biden.
Absolutely. You have to look at the financial contribution that the car industry makes to local economies around Europe. You know, a huge proportion of exports, a huge proportion of R&D spend, a huge proportion of generating VAT and other tax income for these governments. The car industry is an absolute mega beast of the economy around Europe. You know, in America, they're supporting it. In Europe, less so. And that needs to shift. And I think really that's what VW is looking for that support from the financial paymasters within governments to help them make these investments. A battery factory is at least $1 billion of investment per factory. So they need help to make that shift.
Jim, good to see you. Thanks for coming back on the programme. Jim Holder, Editorial Director of Car and Autocar.